Unreal Engine 5.4 is released and it has new motion design tools. The best thing is that everything is in real time. There is no rendering, no waiting. Everything you create, you can play it in real time. And this is what we are going to cover in the course. You will learn everything about motion design in Unreal Engine 5.4, like how to use splines to create animated logo. You will learn how to create motion graphics using the cloner tool and effectors, how to create 2D animations, how to create topography animations using 2D shapes, how to use animation presets, and much more. So let's get started. So before you start, you need to load the plugin. So we need to go to Edit and then Plugins and then search for Motion Design. You can see I already checked that on and it's experimental, so you may have bugs when you work on it. So after that you need to restart Unreal Engine, and after that you can go to the selection mode and change that to motion design. And another important step you need to do, if you come over here, you can see we have the button called motion design, and this is really weird. So basically what this does, it prepares the Unreal Engine editor for using for motion design. So if you click on that, so basically it opens some windows like the motion design outliner. This works like the Cinema 4D outliner. If you are familiar with Cinema 4D, basically you can assign tags and add effectors. And we have the outliner. This is the Unreal Engine standard outliner. And we have the operator stack, we have the modifiers, and we have animators. We don't see anything when I click on them because we didn't create anything yet. So the weird part is, so if you go to the window, you can see we have the motion design outliner, right? And if I go ahead and close that and go ahead again, and I can open it, all right? But if you click on that, and now I can close the editor. So if I click yes, this will close the editor for motion design. And the weird part is, if I go to window, I don't see the outliner. So you need to click on the motion design. And now if I go to window, you can see we have the motion design outliner is here. So I don't know, they may change that in the future, but for now we're gonna use it as it is. So just I wanted to show you this because I think it's important. So if you click by mistake here and close everything, and when you go there you may not see the outliner there. So anyway, and sometimes I get a bug, so Unreal Engine crashes when I click on motion design. So basically I closed Unreal Engine and I restarted the PC and it worked fine. So here you see we have the 2D shapes, we have 3D shapes, we have actors, like creating a spline actor. Basically this allows you to make the objects or the mesh follow a curve. We have the text, this will create the text. We're gonna cover everything. We have the mesh, like creating cube, cylinder, sphere. So here we have the 2D shapes like the rectangle. So if I click on that and click somewhere here and drag, you can see I created a rectangle. And by default, when you open the motion design editor, some options will be checked on by default, for example the snapping and the grid. So if you click on that, you can see I can see the red grid. I turned them off before I record this lesson. So if you didn't see this one, you can come over here and click on the grid. And we have the ring, you can click and drag. If you hold shift, this will lock the ratio. And you can come over here and click and create a line. You can create an arrow. So the first thing you will notice, everything is flat because this is a 2D. And if I go ahead and rotate the camera, you can see it's flat and I don't have any lights in the viewport. There is easy way to create the lights. If you come over here, you can click on create defaults. Basically this will create the direction light, skylight, and post-process volume for you, and the camera too. So if I click on spawn and you come to the outliner, you can see we have the sky and the camera, and now I am inside the camera and I can't rotate the camera because it's locked. So if you want to go to the perspective now, you need to come over here and click on stop piloting, and now I am in the perspective view. If you want to go back, you can come over here and click on the camera. The reason I can't go to the perspective view by using this camera, because if you go to the motion design, you can see we have the lock button. If you click on that once to unlock it, then you can rotate the camera, but I'm gonna leave it locked for now. And now if I go ahead and change that to lit, now the shapes will cast shadows. This is useful when you want to create 3D shapes, and we can create the text too. So let's go to actors and click on text and select the text, and we can come over here to the details and change the text. For example, we can say that Unreal Engine, and here we have it. So now in order to extrude the text or the shapes, so if you click on the Unreal Engine text, if you scroll down, you can see we have the extrude button. This extrude button is just for the text. We don't have the extrude for the shapes. I'm gonna show you how to do that in a moment. So now if I go to the perspective, you can see I extruded the text, but it still looks flat. The reason is you need to scroll. Let's see, where is the unlit button? There is unlit button here. So here you see we have the checkbox is unlit. We're gonna turn it off. So now it looks 3D. I think this is on by default, because when you are creating motion graphics in 2D canvas, you don't need to make it 3D. Maybe that's why they added this option here, is unlit. And if you want to extrude these shapes, you need to come to the operator stack and click on add modifier and click on extrude. And now we extruded that. And this one to add extrude. We're gonna take a look at everything, so don't worry for now. Just I am giving you an overview of the motion designer in Unreal Engine. And another new feature they added in 5.4 is the sequence. So you can have multiple sequences here and you can play them all at the same time. So if you have multiple sequences, you can play the first one, and after the first one is finished, Unreal will play the second one. So now the sequencer is saved in the level, and you can export that. If you want to export that, you can right click and export the sequencer. You remember before you can create the sequencer and it saved in the content browser, but now it's in the level. And if you want to save it in the content browser, you can right click and choose export. So in the next lesson, we're gonna continue. Here I have an empty scene. I deleted everything and I clicked on motion design to prepare the editor for me. So if I go ahead and click on rectangle and drag a rectangle, you can see it's completely black. Even if I look from the behind, it's black. The reason is because the shading is set on lit. If I set that on unlit, now I can see the white color. Let's say you want to see the rectangle, even though if you set that to lit. So you need to come to the details and scroll down to see the unlit. If it's hard for you to see that, you can just search here, type unlit. And if I click on use unlit material, so now I can see the rectangle. This is very useful when you want to use combination of 3D models and 2D shapes together. So let's take a look at some attributes in the details. Let's go ahead and move that up to make some room. If I scroll down, you can see we have the shape tab. Here we have the size type. You can use the Unreal unit or you can use the pixel. And here you see we have the mesh size. It's on X, Y. So if I change the values, as you see they locked together. So when you change the X, the Y changes with it. And if you come over here and change that to free, basically you are unlocking them. So now you can change X or Y individually. We have the uniform scale size, it's obvious what it does. And we have the horizontal alignment. You can align the shape to the left, to the center, or to the right. As you see, the pivot is moving to the right and center and to the left. And the same is for the vertical alignment. We have the left slant and the right slant. You can come over here and reset the buttons. We have the global bevel size. Basically you are beveling the edges or the corners as you see. And you can decrease or increase the subdivisions as you see there. You have more resolution when you increase the subdivision. Another way to change the shape attributes, we can change these attributes or most of them in the viewport. So you can see we have some points on the shape. For example, if I click on this point, I can change the size of the rectangle. And if I click on this point, and if I click and drag it, I am adding bevel to the edge or to the corner. And the same is here. Click and drag to add the bevel. And we have another icons. Maybe it's not visible clearly. If you are watching the video, it's there. It's gray. So if you click on that, basically this is the slant. You can see the attributes or the values are changing in the details. Or you can come over here. You can see we have the top left. This is the top left. So if I increase the size, you can see I am adding the bevel. So you can control these attributes from the viewport too. The other shape, we have the ellipse. So if I click and drag, and we need to change it to unlit, or we can come over here and change that to unlit for now. So we have here, we can change the shape. And if you come to the shape, you can see we have common attributes that we saw in the rectangle. But here we have more options. For example, the angle degree. You can change the angle degree. We're gonna see how to animate this parameter later in the course. And we have the start degree. We have the sides, of course. It's self-explanatory. You can see we are adding more details. So let's take a look at the regular polygon. So if I click and drag, let's select that, click and drag. And in the shapes, as you see, we have common attributes. For example, the size type, the mesh, and the uniform scale. We have the sides. You can make it circle too if you increase the sides, and you can control the bevel size too. And we have the ring. Let's go ahead and click and drag it. If you hold shift, you will lock the ratio. We have the sides. As usual, we have the inner size. By the way, you can animate most of these attributes. If you look here, you can see we have these icons. Basically, you are adding key. So when you see this icon in front of any attribute, this means you can animate that. We're gonna take a look at that later. And of course, we have the angle degree. We have the freehand tool. You can create any shape you want. We have the chevron. This is simple arrow. And you can take a look at the shape and change it from here too. Feel free to experiment with these parameters. We have the arrow. And again, we have the attributes under the shape. You can change the shape of the arrow. And we have the line. It's simple line. In the next lesson, we're gonna continue. I know most of you are so excited to create some animations inside Unreal Engine using motion design, although it's a little bit early to do that, but let's go ahead and do it. We're gonna create simple animation. So here I have empty scene. First of all, I'm gonna click on create defaults to create the lights and the camera and click on spawn. And now I can go to actors and click on text actor and click somewhere there. And you can select the text and change it from here. Let's type Unreal Engine. And we can change the font to maybe Impact and move it to the center. If you come over here, you can see we have this button which will toggle the save frames. So if I click on that, so now I have these green lines. This is my screen. So everything here will be visible to the audience. So now in order to animate the text, we need first to select that and move it down. Let's go ahead and move it down somewhere there. And now we need to set a key. If I come to the location, I can click there to set a key. So if I click on that, you can see I get the key and I have the track here. This is the text and this is the transform. If I expand that and under the location, you can see I have X, Y, Z. We want to animate that just on Z. We don't need the keys on X or Y. So we can delete the keys on X and Y and move this key to the 0. So now I'm gonna move the time slider to about maybe 30 and move it up somewhere there. So now if you want to add a key, you can come over here and click on add key, but the problem is if you click on that, this will add a key on XY2. So let's see that. Let's click on that. So you can see I have keys on XY2. So I don't want that. We don't want unnecessary keys. So now I have just the key here, or another way to add the key, you can just come over here and click on that to add the key just on Z. So now if I go ahead, you can see we have the animation. And now if you want to slow down the animation, you can come over here to the curve editor. And as you remember, we animated that on Z, right? We can click on Z to isolate that. So now if I select the point and move the tangent a little bit up, this will make the animation faster at the start and then it will slow down. So if I click, you can see we have nice animation. It's coming very fast and then slows down. So now let's type the text 5.4, the number 5.4. We can create a new text actor, or we can just duplicate that. We can come over here, right click and click on duplicate. Yes. And the nice thing is now we have the keys too here. So you see. So if I select the second one and come over here, let's type 5.4 and here we have it. So let's move it to the center. So now they are overlapping, so let's go ahead and move this one down. As you see, if I move it and then move the time slider, is jumping back because we have a key here. So let's go to the first key and move it down a little bit. Let's move the camera a little bit and move it there. And we need to set a key. So now it stays there. Let's go ahead and make some room here and play the animation. And they are overlapping, so let's go ahead to the second key, this key, and move it down a little bit, somewhere here, and set a key. And now we need just to move the entire keys, or you can select just these keys or this bar. You can move it a little bit back. And here we have the animation. I want to mention just few things. For example, if you have a key, let's say on X, let's set a key here. So everything works normal, right? But let's say you want to move the numbers a little bit to the left, and now if I play the animation, as you see, it's jumping back because we have keys here. That's why we don't need unnecessary keys. Now let's go ahead and create the rectangle. Let's go to 2D shapes, click on rectangle, and click and drag it there. So let's go ahead to the all and reset the position. Now it's at the center. So now we want to animate the rectangle. I think we're gonna make it bigger at the bottom, so let's select that to cover the entire text, and from here too, maybe from there and from here. And I like to add some bevel to it, so let's go ahead and add some bevel. Great. So now let's go ahead and animate the scale. So if I come over here, I can, let's go first at frame 0. We want to set the key at frame 0. Let's go ahead and set a key there. Let's open that. As you see, I have keys on X, Y, Z. So first of all, I want to animate that on Y. So let's go ahead and set everything to 0, 0, 0. The scale is 0, so now it's invisible. And set the key. First of all, we need to animate that on Y. So let's go somewhere there to maybe 30. And then I'm gonna set the Y to 1. So after certain time, I'm gonna now animate the Z. So let's go ahead and set the key on Z. And after certain time, I wanna set the Z to 1. So now it will expand. So we need to set this one to 1. So as you see, now we have nice animation. We can come over here to the Z. We can set the Z to 0.1 and here to 0.12, so it doesn't look flat. Let's see, it's still looking flat. So let's set the X to 0.12, set the key. Okay, great. You can of course offset the animation by coming to the bar. You can select that and this will move the entire keys. And you can play with the keys. You can select them, make the animation faster a little bit. It's up to you. So now if you want to change the color, you can simply select the shape or any text. You can come over here and change the color. Let's set it maybe to orange. And click OK. Or you can add a gradient. You can come over here to the simple style and change that to linear gradient. So now you can add two colors. Let's go ahead and change this color to maybe dark orange or red. And you can control the offset from here. And if you don't want the lit mode, so you can click here to set it to unlit material. So this was just simple and quick animation tutorial for you. I know maybe it's overwhelming for beginners, but don't worry, we're gonna cover everything in details later in the course. So anyway, this is a homework for you. You may want to try to create different animations. Let's say you want to create the text animation from left to right or from up to down. So I will leave that to you. See you later. If you compare the Motion Design Outliner with the Outliner, this is the standard Outliner for Unreal Engine, you can see they are similar, but we have more control inside the Motion Design Outliner. This is similar to Cinema 4D. For example, you can see your tags there. So each node that is inside the sequencer, you can see we have the sequencer icon next to it. This indicates that the rectangle or the text is inside the sequencer. If you come over here, you can see we have the visibility buttons. So if I click on this one, this will make the rectangle invisible. And if I click on this one, so basically what this does, this will hide the rectangle when I hit play in the sequencer. And we have the lock button. So if I click on that to lock it, and now I cannot move the rectangle because it's locked. And we have the color. You can color the layers. And if you come here to the left, if you click on the filter, you can see we have some icons. Basically this will filter the outliner for you. For example, if I click on the animations, this will show me all the nodes that has the animation tag on it. And I can click on the material. This will show me all the nodes that has the material. And we have the light here. This will show me the nodes that has the light. So let's go ahead and click on this one to close it. And now let's say I want to group two objects. For example, if I have a rectangle and I have a circle. So if I come over here, you can see we have this icon. So basically this one will create a null for you. So if I click on that, you can see it's empty null. This does nothing. So now if I select the circle and the rectangle and drag them under the null, so now I can select the null and move both of objects at the same time, and I can animate them too. If you want to remove the null, you can just select them and drag it above it. So now you can delete the null. And you can parent them. For example, I can parent the rectangle under the circle. So now if I select the circle, the rectangle moves with it. If I want to unparent them, I can click and drag it above it. So now they are unparented. And if for some reason these icons are annoying for you, so you can come over here and remove them from here. So basically this will hide them. The sequencer or animators, so you can see they are not visible now. I don't know, maybe for some reason you don't want them. Anyway, it's there. And you can add the animation or the effectors from the Motion Design Outliner. So if you right click on the circle and you can come over here, you can see we have add animators, we have add modifiers. For example, we can add the extrude or the bevel, and you can see the icon is here. I can come over here and add, for example, any animation. For example, let's say the location, and here we have the animation. And if I want to remove that, we can come over here, right click and choose remove modifier, remove all modifiers, and here right click, and I can disable the animators or delete the animators. Let's see, delete actor animators. If you come to the bottom here, you can see we have some icons. For example, we have the viewport information. If I click on that, you can see we have the size, the cursor position, the zoom is 100, and here we have the grid on or off. So if I click on that, so now if I select the object and move it, I don't see the grid. If I click on that and click and drag, you can see I can see the grid. And here we have the snapping. If I click on that, I can turn it off, as you see, but I still have the snapping, and this is because of this snapping. So if I check that off, so now we don't have any snapping. So basically this will snap it on the grid, and this one the standard Unreal Engine snapping button. And here we have the viewport overlay visibility. This will hide the save gate. And here we have the filters. So basically if you click on that, if you remember, we talked about the shape details there. So if I select the circle, if you go to the shape, let's go ahead to the shape, so you can see most of these options are here too. So basically this is just a shortcut. So if you select that, you can see some of these attributes here in the screen. Let's disable that. We have the guides. This will toggle on the guides. And we have the save frames. We talked about that. And we have the isolate, so you can select any object and isolate that, and you can work on that and hide everything else in the viewport. And we have the bounding box. For example, if I select any object, you can see I have this red bounding box, so you can disable that if you don't like that. And we have the game mode. This will hide the icons. And we have the post-process effects. We're gonna take a look at that later. And here we have the high resolution screenshot. So if I click on that, and now if you come over here and click on this pop-up window, you can see this is your screenshot saved here in this path. And here we have the color. You can change the color quickly from the viewport. And lastly, we have the align actors. For example, if I select the rectangle and I select the circle, shift and select the circle, you can come over here and click on align actor, and you can align them. For example, I can align them horizontally. I can center them. So in the next lesson, we're gonna continue. In motion design, we have two ways to create materials. We have the standard way in Unreal Engine, by coming over here, and let's go ahead and make some room. You can right click and create the material, and let's go ahead and create something in the viewport. Let's go to 3D shapes and let's create a sphere, and we're gonna create a cube. As you see, it's black because we didn't add the lights. So let's go ahead and click on create defaults. I'm gonna click on spawn. And let's go ahead and stop the piloting. So you can create materials with the standard way. You can drag and drop it on the sphere, and you can go inside that. And let's go ahead and add a color. Let's change it maybe to blue and save it. And here we can see the color. The other way is simpler, so let's go ahead and undo that, or let's go ahead and delete that and create another sphere. So the other way is more simpler and easy. So if I select the sphere and go to Material Designer, so you can see here we have the sphere. This is the selected object we selected. I can come over here and click on create material, and this will create the material for me. So let's go ahead and make the window smaller. And here you can see we have the RGB and we have the opacity. In the opacity tab, you can control the opacity, and in the RGB, you can control the color or add the textures. So if I click on this icon, you can see here we have the type is texture. So you can assign texture to your object. And if you click here, you can change it. For example, I can change that to just a solid color. And now I can come over here and change it maybe to red and click OK. Sometimes the color is not showing. I think it's a bug. So let's go ahead and delete that and do it again. Let's go ahead and click on the sphere and drag. And now we're gonna click on create material again. And now it works. So if I go to type and change that to color and change it maybe to blue, as you see, the color is updating in the viewport. Sometimes I get this bug, so the color is not showing in the viewport. So you may want to delete the object and create it again. So when I assign the color, if I come over here and click on open in Unreal Engine Material Editor, you can see the motion design created all these nodes for you. So it's very simple way to create the material instead of going and creating the nodes manually. And another thing I want to mention, let's go ahead and close this window. If you go to the motion design outliner, you can see next to the sphere we have one slot, right? But if you see the cube, we have 6 because we have 6 faces there. So you can assign a material on each face. So if I select the cube and click on material designer, you can see I have 6 slots. I can create the material for the first slot. So let's go ahead and click on create material and select that, and we can change that to solid color, and let's go ahead and assign a green color to it. So as you see, we assigned a color to this slot. And if you want to assign colors to other slots, you need to come over here and change that, for example, to material slot 1, and this will create the material for that, and we can change it to solid color or texture and make it blue. And we can go back to slot 2, create material to the second one. And so on. And if I go ahead and create a 2D shape, let's create a rectangle here. We can click on create material, and here I can change that to gradient, linear or radial. Let's click on radial gradient. This will create a radial gradient for you, and you can control the opacity from here, and you can blend them. If you have multiple layers, you can create another layer by coming over here and click on add new layer. This will create new layer for you. You can create a texture or solid color, and if you click on, let's say, a texture, another layer, if you open the material editor, so as you see, the network is updated for you. So it's very easy to create materials inside motion design. We have the UV, for example. You can control the offset. Let's go ahead and delete this one. You can control the UV offset, rotation. You can control the scale. So as you see, it's really easy to work with the UVs too in the material designer. We have the mirror, we have the clamp texture, and if you come over here, you can change the material, for example, to opaque or masked. All these parameters, you can change them here too. So if you select that, and you can see here we have the blend mode, we have translucent, masked, and additive. You can change this from here too. The other tab is the opacity. You can control the opacity from here. We're gonna take a look at these options in more depth in the future. And another way to change the colors, let's say I create a sphere. I can come over here to the material, and I can come to the primary simple color, and I can change the color from here too. And if I go ahead and make some room here, so you can see we have the material type simple. I can change it to material designer. I can change the style to solid or linear gradient. If you want to add another color gradient, you can change the color from here. So in the next lesson, we're gonna continue. Motion design in Unreal Engine provides you with some presets to create animations called animators. So basically, instead of creating the animations manually, it gives you some presets for creating the animations. We're gonna take a look at them in a moment. So first, let's create something in the viewport. So let's go ahead and create a circle, holding Shift and moving somewhere there. And I like to reset the position and reset the rotation if you have any. Sometimes when you create the object, it may be rotated like that, so just click on reset. So in the operator stack, you can come to the animators, and if I go to add animators, I'm gonna select the first one, which is the bounce, and I'm gonna select the location. So basically this will animate the location. So of course, all these animations can be done using keys in the sequencer. Let's go ahead and make some room to see the properties better. So first of all, we have the invert effect. This will invert the animation. And we have the global magnitude. This is a multiplier for the animation. As you see, it's going faster than before. So let's make it 1. And we have the global frequency. This will increase the frequency. So if you set this one to 1, so the animation will do 1 repetition in 1 second. But if you set that to 0.5, this will do 1 animation in every 2 seconds, and so on. So let's set it back to 1, and this will add random animation offset to the animation. As you see, it's randomly moving in the viewport. The accumulated time offset, we're gonna take a look at that later. So here, if you come to the linked properties, let's say you want to move it on just Z. So you can come over here and check off the X and Y. So now the animation is just on Z axis. And if you open the group, you can see we have attributes just for Z, and we have separate attributes for Y and X, so you can control them individually. We have the magnitude. This is from 0 to 1, so you can decrease the magnitude by decreasing this value, 0.1. As you see, the animation magnitude is decreased. Let's set it back to 1. Here we have the amplitude mean. Basically, this will move the sphere on minus Z. So if I set that to minus maybe 400, you can see it's going down. Let's set it to minus 200, and this will move it to positive Z. It's going up, as you see. Let's set it to 300 so you can see it better. We have the frequency. I talked about the frequency. If you set this one to 0.5, the animation will be repeated each 2 seconds. If you set it to 1, the animation will be repeated every 1 second. We have the time offset. This will offset the time. And as you see, the animation is repeated infinitely. So let's say you want to connect that to the sequencer. So you want to start the animation when you hit the play button. You can do that by scrolling down. You can come to the time source name and change that to sequence. And you need to set the sequence name. We have just one sequence. It's listed here. So now if I hit play, you can see the animation starts when I start playing the sequencer. And now let's say you want to have more control. For example, you want to increase the speed of the sphere when it falls down. You can do that by coming here again and change that to a manual. So now in the manual, you can see here we have the custom time. So now I can control the time from here. So now I can set a key for that. So let's go to frame 0 and set a key there. And then I'm gonna move that to frame maybe a 30. And I'm gonna set it to 1 and set a key. So now I can come to the sequencer curves and select that. And now I can control the animation from here using the tangents. I'm gonna make it fall faster. So you can see it's faster, and I can move the keys. So I have more control using the manual mode. Let's move it a little bit back. And let's go ahead and delete these keys. I'm gonna delete them. Let's go again to the animator. And let's go back to the sequence. You can see we have the use start time and stop time. You can specify on which time you want to stop the animation. Let's set it maybe at 30. And the 30 is too much. Maybe let's set it to 2 seconds. And this one, let's start it from 0. So as you see, the animation stopped after reaching 2 seconds. And if you go back to the accumulated time offset, if you click on that, as you see, we don't see anything in the viewport because I need to change that to a manual. And now if I scrap that, you can see I can control the animation from here. I can key this option too. So let's go ahead and key that. I can come over here and set a key and come here and set a key. Let's set that to 1 and set a key. So now we are controlling the animation manually, as you see. And you can delete the animator from here. If you click on the delete, this will delete the animation. And if you want to disable that for some reason, you can check that off. And now it's disabled, even if you have a keys here. So let's delete that. And you can go back again to bounce. And if I set that to location YZ, as you see, we have the same options. But if you come over here, you can see we have just Y and Z. And by the way, if you want to add the X, you can come over here and click on plus and click on location, and this will add the location X for you too. And you can delete them if you wanted to. Let's delete that. And we can go back to bounce. I can add the rotation. We're gonna not see the rotation because this is a sphere. So let's go ahead and click on the star and create a star there. And let's go back and change that to rotation. Now we have the rotation. I can disable those. Now we have the rotation on the star, and we almost have everything like before. We have the magnitude to increase the rotation, we have the frequency, and we have the random time offset too, and you have the time source name too, as we covered them before. Let's go ahead and delete that. We're gonna take a look at the scale. We have the scale. As you see, it's scaling the star back and forth. You can check that off. And you can play with the parameters here. We have the amplitude. You can stretch it more. For some reason, you want to do that. So in the next lesson, we're gonna continue. In this lesson, I'll show you how to create this countdown. So if I hit play, you can see we have the countdown. It's very easy to do it. So let's go ahead and do it. So first of all, I'm gonna select that and delete it. Yes. And then I'm gonna delete this track here in the sequencer. So if I go ahead and let's say I create a star or a sphere, doesn't matter. If I go to the add animator, if you go to the clock, you can see it's empty. And if I click on that, you can see we have an error. No properties are currently linked to this animator. So basically this clock animator works just with the text. So let's go ahead and delete that. And we're gonna go to actors and click on text and place it somewhere here. And now if I select that and go again to add animators, go to clock, you can see here we have the text that we created. So if I click on that, now the error is gone, and now we can see the clock. You can see here we have the H symbol with the percentage symbol next to it. So if I delete the second, this is the second. So if I delete that, so you can see now, if I click somewhere here, you can see we have just the hour and we have the minutes. And if I delete these symbols, the percentage and the M for the minute, now we have just the hour. And I can just write percentage S. This will show you capital S, sorry, you need to write it capital S. So now you can see we are seeing the seconds. If you want to see the minutes, you can type M, capital M, and enter. You can see now we have the minutes. I want to type the seconds, so let's percentage and set that to S. We have here the mode, we have the local time, we have the countdown. So if I go ahead and select the stopwatch, and you can see the numbers going up, and I can set that to countdown. And here in the countdown duration, I'm gonna set that to 1 minute. If you want to set that less than 1 minute, you need to type, for example, 59 and S. And now if I go to the time source name, I can set that to manual, or I can set that to sequence. So if I set that to sequence, and now go ahead and click play, nothing happens because we need to specify the sequence name. Let's set that there and go back and play it, and here we have it. Let's say you want to make the animation faster or the countdown faster. So you need to do another step. You need to come to the time source name and change that to manual. We're gonna animate it manually. So I'm gonna go to the first frame and I'm gonna set a key here. And then I'm gonna go, let's say, to frame. Let's set it to maybe 90. And I'm gonna set 59. Let's set that to 60 to make it rounded. And I'm gonna set the custom time to 60 here and set a key. And now if I hit play, you can see it's fast. If you want to make it slower, you can select the key and move it to the right. You can extend the time if you want to make it slower. So now it's slower. Let's go ahead and make it slower. And I'm gonna move it to the right. And now it's slower than before. As you see, the numbers going slowly and then going fast and then slowing down. If you notice that, going slowly and then going fast and then slows down. This is because of the keys in the sequencer curves. So if I go to sequencer curve and select and show the keys, you can see we have this curve. So we need to select both of keys and then click on the linear to make it flat. So now the speed is constant. So now if I go hit play, we fix the issue. And of course, because this is a text, you can go to the details and here you can change the font and you can scale it from here if you wanted to. You can change the typeface to bold. And here we have it. Before I close this lesson, I want to mention a few things. So in the countdown duration, you notice the S is lowercase. So if I delete that and hit enter, this will work fine. If you set it uppercase, this is not gonna work. So 60 S, this is not gonna work. So as you see, so the uppercase is just for the display format. In the countdown, you need to set it S. So if I remove that, and it works fine too. But if I go ahead and add the minutes to the countdown, let's say I want to type %M, capital M for minutes. And now if I play the animation, you can see it's not working. The minutes is not working. So basically, because we didn't type anything here, just the numbers, it will take the seconds. Let's go ahead and separate them with semicolon. So let's set semicolon there. So if you want to count down the minutes, you need to come over here and type M lowercase m. So now it works, the seconds and the minutes together. Let's go ahead and make some time here so we can see it. We need to extend that, so let's go down because this is 60. So let's set it maybe to 100 and set a key. So now you can see it works, the seconds and the minutes together. So just remember, you need to set the minutes, the M letter with lowercase here, and if you have just seconds, you don't need to type anything here, just the seconds, in case you have just the seconds there. So in the next lesson, we're gonna continue. Now let's go ahead and cover the remaining animators. So let's go ahead first and create something in the viewport. Let's create an arrow. And if I go to add animators, we have the third option, which is the oscillate. So I'm gonna click on location and let's make some room here. So as you see, we have the same attributes with the bounce or the clock, but we have additional one here, oscillate function. So if I go ahead there and let's go ahead and disable the X and Z. So all these attributes are the same. We covered them in the clock and in the bounce. Just we have additional one here. So we have the sine. So if I change that to cosine, this will apply a cosine animation. We have the square and we have the inverted square and sawtooth. So they are different animation. And remember, you can create all these animations by using the keys on the location or rotation or scale. So if you look at the Y, because we enabled the Y, you can see we have animation on Y. So you can do it manually too if you want to, but this is easier way to do it using the presets. So let's go ahead and change that to a sine. And I'm gonna add another animation on that. So let's go ahead and click on add, and I'm gonna add another location there. And this one, I'm gonna change that to a cosine. And then I'm gonna deselect the Y, and I'm gonna turn off all of them. I'm gonna check on just the location Z. So now you have a circle animation because we are using the cosine and the sine together. I don't want to go on the math behind it. So when you use the sine and cosine together, you get the circle animation. So let's go ahead and delete everything. And if I go to add animation again, and I'm gonna click this time on the visibility. So as you see, the visibility is animated. And if you want to add the location on it, so you can come over here and click on plus. You can add the scale, you can add the rotation too if you wanted to. So here you see we have the visible, rotation, and the scale. You can add the location too. So let's go ahead and delete that. Let's go ahead and take a look at the poles. So if I click on location, and you can see again we have the same attributes there, but we have two additional attributes there. We have the easing function and we have the easing type. So let's go ahead and disable the X and Z just to make the animation clear here. So I can change that, for example, to sine. I can change that to, for example, quart. So you can see we have different animation, and remember, you can create these animations manually too. And if you look here, we have again animation on Y because we are enabled the Y. And we have the type. You can change that to out. This will slow down at the front, and you can change that to in. You can get different animations. We have the bounce. This is interesting, in out. So let's go ahead and delete that. And the next one is the sound wave. So if I go ahead and click on location, you can see we can add a sound here. So if I go ahead and change that to any sound, for example, this one, so you can see the animation is moving based on the sound. And of course you can add that to the scale or to the visibility too if you want to. Let's go ahead and add the visibility and delete the remaining. And here we have the sound connected to the visibility of the object. Let's delete that. The next one is the time. There is nothing special about that. So you can see we have the same attributes. We covered that. And we have the wiggle location, and it gives you this wiggle effect. So these presets are very useful. It saves you a lot of time instead of going and animating the keys. So that's it for this lesson. See you in the next lesson. In this lesson, I show you how to apply animators on the text. As you see, in the viewport, I have random animation on each letter. So let's go ahead and do that. First, I'm gonna delete that. Let's go ahead and create the text actor, and I like to go to the general and reset the location and the rotation. Let's go to text and type motion design, and I like to extrude that, so let's type extrude to search for extrude, and I'm gonna set that maybe to 30. And as you see, it's still looking flat because we need to go ahead and search for unlit, and I'm gonna turn that off. So now if I select the text and go to add animators, and if you go to oscillate or bounce, you can see we have additional options. So the main difference between these options and this one, in this you can apply random animation on each letter. So this is the main difference. If you go to location, for example, you can see the animation is applied on the entire text, so it deals with the text as one piece. But if I delete that and go again to oscillate and then set that to location for the text, and another step I need to do, I need to come to the random time offset and check that on. So now you can see we have random animation on each letter. So this is the main difference between them. You can come to the global magnitude and lower that 0.2 maybe, and you can come to the linked properties and change each one from here. And you can add the rotation too. So if you come over here to add, you can click on rotation. This will add random rotation on them. And of course you can go there and add the visibility too or the scale too. And if you go to time, you can see we have the text here too. If you go to wiggle, you can see them here. So let's go to wiggle and type text character location. As you see, the random time offset is turned on by default. Let's go ahead to rotation maybe, and we can lower that 0. maybe 3, and here we have it. So in the next lesson we're gonna continue. In this lesson I'll show you how to attach animators to the shape properties. If I select the star, you can see I have animation on the inner size fraction, and if I select the arrow, you can see I have animation here, and you'll notice here we have the animator icon next to the ratio line height. This is the ratio. As you see, it's moving. And if I select the circle, you can see again we have the animator icon next to the start degree. So let's go ahead and do that. So first I'm gonna select everything and delete them. I'm gonna create that from scratch. Let's select the star and the arrow and hit delete on the keyboard and select yes. So first let's go ahead and click the arrow, and let's reset the position, and I'm gonna click on the ring and create a ring on top of that, and I'm gonna reset the location too. So if I select the ring and if I go to the shape, you can see we have the angle degree. I can change the angle and I can change the start degree too. And you will notice we have keys next to them. So you can animate that manually by setting a key in the sequencer, or we can come over here and right click and choose any animation we want. For example, I can choose oscillate, and you'll notice here we have additional property. Unfortunately, you can't see this property if you go to the operator stack, and in the animation you can't see that as you see. So you need to right click on top of that and then oscillate and choose angle degree. This will animate the angle degree as you see. So now we have the animation, and you can go to the animators and change the values from here. For example, I can change that to cosine, to sawtooth. Let's make it back to sine. And if you go to the linked properties and if you expand that, you can see we have the angle degree. This is what we are animating now. And if you expand that, you can control the magnitude, the max. So if I set that maybe to 50, you can see I am controlling the max number of the angle degree. So you have a lot of option to work with. So we have here the minimum, we can set that to min 50, and this one maybe let's set it to 180. And you can control the frequency to make it faster. And now I can go back to the motion design outliner and I can parent the ring under the arrow. And now I can set a key to the location of the arrow. So let's go to the first frame and move it somewhere here. So as you see, the ring is parented. So let's set a key and I'm going to maybe 180 and move it there. You can click here to set a key again. So now if I play the animation, we have the motion. And I can select the ring again. I can go to the shape again. I can animate the start degree too. So you can right click on that. And maybe this time we're gonna add the wiggle. So let's click on start degree. And here we have the animation on the start degree too. If you want to remove the animation, you can right click and go to the wiggle or oscillate. Sometimes, as you see, this showing you that it's off, but it's on. So I think it's a bug here. So you can click on that to turn it off. And sometimes, let's undo that. Sometimes this showing you that it turned off, but it's turned on. So as you see, so the best way to delete that, you can go to operator stack and delete them from here. So we can go back to the motion design outliner and duplicate that, hit Ctrl and D. As you see, I have the same animation on it. So let's go ahead and rotate that and maybe make it bigger a little bit. And here we have it. We can animate the properties of the arrow too. So if I select the arrow and go to the shape, I can animate the line arrow here, or I can animate the line height. It's up to you. So because we have key here, so we can right click and choose wiggle again and choose ratio line height. So now we are animating the line height, as you see. And I like to control the maximum. So as you see, it's going very far. So let's go ahead to the wiggle and I'm gonna expand the height and I'm gonna change the amplitude max maybe to 0.5 and I'm gonna increase the frequency to 3 to make it faster. Let's go ahead and set this one to 0.4. So we have animation on the arrow too. So as you see, you can create really complicated effects. Let's go ahead and click on the star and select the star. And let's go ahead and reset that. And if I go to the shape, I can animate the inner size fraction. I can animate the bevel size because I have key here. That's why we can right click and choose any animation preset we want. I'm gonna animate the inner size fraction. So right click on that. We can choose wiggle or oscillate or bounce. It's up to you. So let's select inner size. And now we have animation on top of that. And I can change the parameters from here. I can change the global magnitude. Or I can come to the linked properties and open the inner size. And we can change, for example, the frequency. We can change the max and the min too. So in the next lesson, we're gonna continue. Before we continue, I want to mention one important thing. So if I create anything in the viewport and animate that, let's say I want to animate this circle. So let's go ahead and animate that, set a key here, and then I'm gonna go maybe to frame 90 and move it there and set a key from here or from here. So now I have normal animation, right? But let's say you have multiple objects. So if I duplicate that, duplicate, Control and D and hit yes, I have 2 now. So let's move this one to the bottom and remove all these keys so I can move it. So now I have 2 animations. And now if you want to group them, if I select them and click on null, now they are grouped under the null, right? But notice how the animation is destroyed. So if I go ahead and move them outside the group, you can see they are working normally. But if I move them under the group, you can see the curve is offsetted. This is because we have values on the location. You can see for some reason Unreal adds some values on the location, so you need to reset that. Just click on reset. So this is the issue. I wanted to mention that because it's important to be careful about that when it comes to creating the groups inside the outliner. So when you create the group, immediately go ahead and reset the location values. So in the next lesson, we're gonna start. In this lesson, we're gonna create this animated background with the text animation. So let's go ahead and do it. First of all, I'm gonna create new level by going to File and click on New Level, and I'm gonna click on Empty Level and hit Create. I'm gonna click on Motion Design to prepare the windows for me, and I'm gonna click on Create Defaults to create the lights and the camera, and click on Spawn. First of all, I'm gonna click on the rectangle and I'm gonna create a rectangle, and clicking on the vertex and move it to the right and to the bottom to fill the window. If I go to the 3D view, I wanna push it far from the camera because I want to create some object in front of the plane. This will prevent the objects to go behind the plane. So that's why I am moving it far a little bit. And now if I go to the camera, you can see it's small now. So let's go ahead and click on that and move it. I want to fill the screen. And move it to the right too. You can create the colors in different ways. The simplest way is to select the rectangle and come to the simple color and change it from here. Let's make it a little bit dark. As you see, the plane is affected by the lights, so we're gonna make it unlit. Let's type unlit. And we're gonna use unlit material. I don't want the background to be affected with the lights. It's up to you, you can leave it off if you wanted to. I think I'm gonna change the color a little bit more, make it a little bit darker. Something like that. And hit OK. And now I'm gonna click on the rectangle and create one here. And I like to make the corners rounded. I can do that in the shape, and if I scroll down, we can go to the right top, and this is the top right, and we're gonna increase the size to make it rounded, as you see. And for the bottom right, we're gonna expand the bottom right and make the size bigger too. And now we're gonna animate that. We can select the object, we can animate that from the transform, but I'm gonna show you another way. You can click on the key button here to animate that, but I'm gonna show you the other way. So let's go ahead and select the rectangle and drag it to the sequencer. And after dragging that, you can come over here and click on the plus and click on transform. This will add the transforms there. I don't want the rotation or the scale. I want just the location. And I want to animate it on Y. So let's go ahead and move that to the left. At frame 0, I'm gonna click here to add a key. And let's go to frame maybe 120 and move it to the right and set a key. And now we have the animation. As you see, the animation is starting very slow and coming fast and then slows down. We can go to the curve and select the points and click on the linear interpolation. Now the animation will be constant from the start to finish. And you can see the animation is slow a little bit. We can come over here and move the key, or I can click there and move it maybe to 90. Let's see that. Nice. In the next lesson, we're gonna loop the animation to make it infinitely. Now we're gonna loop the animation. Let's go ahead and make some room here. So let's increase the frames. If I select the rectangle and go to sequencer, if I select the curve, not the points, the curve, and if you right click and go to post infinity and click on cycle, this will create looping animation for you. So now if I go ahead and play that, as you see, we have repeated animation. It's so easy to do it. Now let's go ahead and create the material. Let's go to material designer and click on create material. And here I'm gonna click on type and change that to a solid color. And I'm gonna choose orange color for that. And click OK. If you go to the opacity, you can see here I have a gradient. This will apply a gradient alpha. As you see on the right, we have the color and gradually fading. I think there is a bug in Unreal, so when you apply a transparency on the object, you can't select that. So you need to come over here and select it from the Motion Design Outliner. So for some reason, if you don't see the gradient, you can, let's go ahead and delete that. I'm gonna show you that from scratch. So let's go ahead and click on solid and delete this one, this layer. So let's say you didn't see the gradient, you can come over here and go to gradient and click on linear gradient. As you see, we have the gradient on that. You can scale it or you can rotate it if you wanted to. Let's leave it at 0 and you can scale it from here too. Let's leave it at 1 and let's go ahead and close that. So now we have the alpha on it. So in the next lesson, we're gonna continue. Now we're gonna copy and offset the animation. So first of all, I'm gonna name it line 1. And then let's go ahead and duplicate that. Control and D. Yes. Control and D. Yes. And again, Control and D. So here we have 4 copies. And now we're gonna offset them. I wanna move the second one a little bit to the right, and the third one, and this one too, maybe there. And now I want to move the position of them on Z axis. If I go ahead and select the Z and move it up, and if I go back, you see it's jumping back to the previous location. This is because we have keys on Z. So let's go ahead and delete all the keys on Z. We can select them and delete them. Let's go ahead and do that for the next one. You could delete the keys before the copying, but that's not a problem. So let's go ahead to the Z here, delete the keys, and this one too. Delete the keys. And now I can offset them. So let's go ahead and select everything and select the second one, offset it up, and this one may be down, and this one maybe somewhere here. And here we have nice animation, and we added some variation by offsetting the position of the lines. And now if I go ahead and select everything and create a group, and let's call the group lines group. And now you can see the animation is offset a little bit because we have values on the locations, so make sure you select the group and click on reset. Now everything works fine. You can change the timing of each one. You can select them and maybe increase the time a little bit and shorten the time, increase this one a little bit, and here we have it. It's much better than before. Let's increase this one too. We can group them here too. We can select them, right click and go to move to folder and new folder, and let's call it lines, just to make everything nice and organized. So in the next lesson we're gonna continue. Now let's go ahead and create the thin lines. I'm gonna start with thin line, so let's go ahead, click somewhere here and click the next point. And now if you want to make it straight, you can simply select that. I have difficulty with selecting the objects, so this is the two vectors, so this is the rotation, so we're gonna set that to 0 to make it in straight line. And the next one is the scale or the length of the line, and you can control the width from here too. So let's go ahead and drag that here, and let's set a key by coming here and click on plus icon, and I'm gonna create a transform. So let's go ahead and delete the rotation and the scale. We don't need them, we need just to animate the Y. So let's select that and move it back a little bit, and at frame 0 I'm gonna set a key, and then I'm gonna move it, and at frame 90 let's zoom in. If you hold Control on the keyboard and use the mouse scroll, you can zoom in. So maybe at frame 100 let's move it, and somewhere here, and set a key. And remember, we need to go to the curve editor and select the points and make them straight. And we need to loop it too, so selecting the curve and right click and choose post infinity and cycle. And here we have it. If you want to reset the camera, so let's say you move the camera, you can come to the camera and go to camera zoom and reset the zoom. So now let's go ahead and duplicate the line. I'm gonna duplicate that one time, and then I'm gonna move it and duplicate it again, and maybe move it down again, duplicate, and again duplicate. And this time we're gonna offset that from the sequencer, so let's go ahead. This is the first line, so this is the second one. Let's go ahead and offset them. Let's make some room here. This will add some variation to the animation. So now if I go ahead, we have nice variation as you see. You can use the sequencer curves too if you wanted to. So now let's go ahead and group them in the outliner tool. So let's go ahead and select all of them and click on the null to group them, and let's call it thin line group. After creating the group, we will have one issue. So if I go ahead and play back that, you can see the animation ends here at the middle, and this is because we have values here. As you see, when I created the group or the null has values on the location. So make sure you reset that, so now the animation will work normally. So this is important. After you create the null, for some reason they have some values on the location, so you need to reset that. And now we can color the lines. Let's go ahead and color them. Let's go to material. We're gonna create simple colors. Let's create this one and this one. And maybe this one. I will leave the rest as white color. And here we have it. So in the next lesson, we're gonna continue. In this lesson, we're gonna use Niagara to add some particles on the background. If you don't know Niagara, that's fine. We're gonna create very simple particle system, so don't worry about that. So before I get started, I like to move all these shapes to a new folder. So move to folder and click on new folder, and let's call it thin lines. So now let's go to content browser. In the folder, let's go ahead, right click and choose Niagara system. Here I have some presets, so I'm gonna choose this one. It's called hanging particles, so click on that and click on create, and let's call it Niagara system background. So let's go ahead and dive inside that. Guys, if you want to learn more about Niagara, check out my course on Udemy. It's a complete guide to Niagara. It's more than 14 hours. So when you first open the Niagara system, you can see I have some particles. They are very small, so let's go ahead to the initialize particle, and I'm gonna increase the size. This will add random size to the particles. So if I set this one maybe to 20, and this one maybe to 10, this will add some variation on the size. I can't explain everything here, guys, because this is another topic, so I will try my best to explain what we need for this lesson. And if you are confused or you don't know how to use Niagara, you can skip this lecture. So now I'm gonna add random color. So if I go to the color mode, I can come over here and change that to random hue and saturation. And now if I change the color, let's say to orange, and now you can see we have random color, and you can increase the range from here. So I can set this one to 0.2 and this one to -0.2, and here we have it. And now let's go ahead and save it and add it to the sequencer. The reason I am showing you how to create the Niagara system in this lecture, because I want to show you how to combine the Niagara with the motion design, so you can create very complicated effects. So let's go ahead and drag and drop it there. This is a Niagara system I created before I record this lesson, so let's go ahead and delete that. So here we have the new one. So now if you want to make it cover the entire scene, we need to increase the emitter size of the Niagara system. So if I go there, and if you go to the shape location, basically the particles are emitted in a box. Unfortunately, we can't see the box, so let's go ahead and increase it. So let's set that to 1000. This will expand the box, as you see, and I'm gonna set it on 1000 on Z2. So now we have a big box emitter. So now, as you see, the particles covering the entire scene. You can control the transparency of the particles by coming to the scale color and maybe decrease this value. Let's decrease it to 0.5, and save it. So here we have it. And we can add a text. We can go ahead to the actors and click on text. And let's go to, let's make sure we selected that. And let's go to text and let's call it motion design. And we can go to the operator stack, and in the animators we can add a wiggle to the text location or rotation. Let's go ahead and decrease the global magnitude maybe to 0.3 or 0.2. So here we have it. In the next lesson we're gonna continue. In this lesson we will take a look at Cloner Actor in motion design. It allows you to duplicate 3D models and arrange them in a grid, circle or cylinder. It allows you to add random position, rotation or scale for each copy. So let's take a look how it works. So if you come over here, you can see we have the Cloner Actor. So if I click on that and place it somewhere here, we don't see anything because we don't have any lights. So let's go ahead and click on create defaults and click on spawn. We still don't see anything. We need to go to the Cloner and click on reset to place the Cloner at the center. So let's go ahead and stop piloting so we can orbit in the scene. Here we have it. If I expand the Cloner, you can see I have a default cube. So if you select the Cloner, in the general tab we have the transform. This will transform the entire Cloner. And we have the rotation and the scale. We're gonna take a look at the effectors later. So let's go ahead and close this tab. If I go to layouts, you can see I have the layout name. It's grid. I can arrange them in a line or a circle or cylinder and so on. So let's go back to grid. I can change the count. Let's set that to 6, this one to 6, and I can change the Z2. Let's set it to 6. Now let's say you want to add multiple objects. So you can see we have just one, right? But I can add more objects. So if I go to 3D shapes and let's go ahead and click on the sphere and create a sphere. And let's go to the shape and reset the mesh size to make it perfect sphere. And let's make it maybe 80, or let's set it to 100. And now if I drag the sphere under the clone, not under the cube, under the clone, so now we have the clone and we have the cubes together. And as you see, they are placed uniformly, so we can randomize that by going to the cloner. And if you go to the render, you can see we have the mesh render mode. So if I set that to random, now they are placed randomly. And you can add more. For example, I can add a cone and I can drag it under the cloner, and here we have it too. So let's go ahead and delete the clone and the sphere, and let's leave the cube. So let's go back to the layouts, and if you come here in the spacing, you can see we have the space X, Y, Z, so I can increase the space between the objects on Y or Z. And you can see here we have the constraint, so I can set that to a sphere. So basically this will create the sphere and delete everything outside the sphere. And if I go ahead and increase that, you will notice that clearly here. So you can see everything outside the sphere is deleted, and I can change that to a cylinder, and I can change that to a texture. I have a texture here, so let's go ahead and bring it. Let's go to content browser. I have the Unreal Engine logo, so if I click on that, you can see I have the white and black, so everything in the black will be deleted. So let's go ahead and open the texture constraint, and now if I drag that to the texture, you can see we have the Unreal Engine logo, and as you see it's not visible clearly because the cubes are very big. So let's go ahead and change the scale of the cube. Let's go ahead and lock the scale, and I'm gonna change the scale maybe to 0.25. And now if I go to cloner and increase the count, maybe this one to, let's say 30 by 30, and this one let's leave it to maybe 10. This is the height. So here we have the logo. We can decrease the spacing between them like that. And here we have it. And I can invert that. If you go to the invert constraint, you can invert that too. So let's go to the line. We can distribute the boxes on a line. I have the count, I have the spacing, I have the axis, I want it on Z or X. I have the rotation. And we have the circle. Let's go ahead and increase the count from here, maybe to 30. I have the radius of the sphere, and all of these can be animated. I have the angle start, I have the ratio, you can animate that too. And you have here the scale. And next we have the cylinder. We can arrange that in a cylinder. We have the base count, we have the height count, we have the height of the cylinder. This will offset the objects or the cubes. We have the radius, this will offset it. And we have the same options here. We have the angle ratio, and we have the orient mesh. Basically this will disable the mesh orientation. As you see, we don't have any orientation. If I increase that, the orientation is the same. And we have the sphere uniform. You can distribute them in a sphere. And we have here the same options. We have the honeycomb, we have the mesh. We're gonna take a look at that in the next lesson. Let's continue and see how the mesh layout works. So let's create the cloner, and let's go ahead and reset everything here. So if you go to the layout, if you change that to a mesh, we need now to select a mesh. So if I go ahead to the 3D shapes, and if I click on cone and create a cone, this is not going to work because this is not a mesh. So if I go ahead and select that and click on the picker, this is not going to work. As you see, we are seeing just one cube. So let's go ahead and undo that, or let's delete the cone. You need to select a mesh because the name says you need a static mesh. As you see, you can change that to skeletal mesh or static mesh. We can't use the 3D shapes there, so you need to create shapes from here, or you can come over here and click the shapes from here. So let's go ahead and click on the cone and place it somewhere there, and let's scale it. And now if I go to the cloner and click on pick and pick this cone, you can see now it works. So it's very important to use a mesh, not 3D shapes. And you can increase the count from here. You can change the sample data. You want to place the objects on the vertices or triangles. You can place them on sockets if you have anyone here, or bones or sections. And the next option is the spline. You can place the objects on the spline. So if I go to the actors and click there and create a spline, let's go ahead and select the last point and move it there. And let's go ahead, right click on the curve and click on add spline point. So now I added another point there. Let's go ahead and move this one back, and I'm gonna add another point here, add spline point, and maybe move it down and move this one up. And now I can select the cloner and go to the layout name and change that to spline. And now I can click on pick and pick the spline. So now we placed the cubes on the spline. I can click on orient mesh to orient the mesh on the spline. And of course you can go back to the spline and change the point. Let's select the point. And as you see, the cloner is updating. Very, very powerful. Now let's go ahead and see how to add random position, rotation or scale to the cloner. So let's go ahead and create the cloner first. And let's go ahead and select that. And I'm gonna reset everything. And let's go ahead and create the defaults to create the lights. Let's switch to lit and stop piloting. So let's go to the cloner, and in the layouts I'm gonna set the Z count to 1, and I'm gonna set this one maybe to 30 by 30. If you go to the range, you can see we have one option. If I enable that, now I get more options. So here I can add random offset or rotation or scale to the clone objects. So for example, in the mean, if I increase the mean value, you can see I can offset the objects. So let's set it to minus 300, and on the max I can offset that on the other side. And I can do the same for the Y and for the max Y2. And I can offset the rotation too on the mean and on the max. Let's set this one to minus, let's set it minus 90 and this one to 90. And now I have random rotation on X, and I can set the random rotation on Y2 minus 90 and 90. And we can do the same here too, minus maybe 90 by 90. And we have now random rotation and random offset too. You can animate the offset, but unfortunately you can't animate the rotation. As you see, we don't have keys there. So in the scale, you can click on the uniform scale enabled. This will scale the objects uniformly. So now I can set mean scale and the max scale too. And I can animate the scales too. For example, I can come to the scale mean. I can right click, you can go to the wiggle and click on range scale uniform mean. This will animate the scale mean for you. And we can do the same for the scale max too. Set it. And as you remember, you can control the animation by going to the operator task, and under the animators you can see here are the animators we added. And we can add animation to the offset too. For example, I can key the mean offset. So let's go ahead and click on the key to add a key there. And I can move it somewhere there, and I can increase it or decrease it. Let's set it to 0 and set a key. And now we have animation. And let's go to the first key, and we're gonna key everything. So let's go ahead and set a key here and key for the max 2. And for the next key, I'm gonna set everything to 0 and set a key. And here we have the animation. We didn't set the key for the max, so let's go back maybe there and set a key here. And let's go to the last frames and set that to 0 and set a key. So now we have the animation. In this lesson, we're gonna learn how to clone objects on a text. So first of all, let's create the clone object, and let's go ahead and reset the position and the rotation. And now I'm gonna click on the text, And again, we're gonna reset that. Let's hide the clone for a moment, and I'm gonna change the text. Let's go to text and let's type motion. And I'm gonna change the font to impact, and I'm gonna go to layout, and I'm gonna increase the spacing between the letters. So let's go ahead and increase that, something like that. And I'm gonna go to geometry to extrude the text. Let's go ahead and extrude it a little bit. And now let's go ahead and maybe scale it a little bit to make it big. Let's see the size compared to the clone. It's fine. So let's go to cloner and let's go to layouts and change it to a mesh. As you remember, I talked about this option. You can't clone objects on 3D shapes or actors. So if I click on the pick and click on that, nothing happens. So basically we need to convert the text to a static mesh. So we can do that with some tools inside Motion Design. So if I go to operator task, make sure first select the text and then go to operator task, and under the modifiers you should see this option called dynamic mesh converter. So now if I click on convert to static mesh asset, this will ask me the location where you want to save the file. So let's select the mesh and let's call it static mesh text and click save. And now I can delete this text. Let's delete it, or we can hide it too, doesn't matter. So let's go to mesh and drag it now in the viewport. Let's reset the position and scale it up. And here we have it. And now if I go ahead to the cloner and click on pick and pick that, now you can see everything works fine. And let's go now to the count and increase the count. Maybe let's set it to 400. And let's go ahead and decrease the size. We can decrease the cube size from here, or you can go to the cloner and under the range you can enable that and you can decrease it from here too. So let's go ahead and enable the scale uniform and decrease it 0.2, let's say by 0.5. This will add random scale to each box. And the first thing you will notice, the objects are not distributed evenly on the text. You can see we have very dense areas and here we don't have anything. So the reason is because if I go ahead to the wireframe, you can see we have less geometry or less faces or less vertices in these areas. And you can see this letter is more dense, and you can see we have more vertices in these areas. As you remember, if I go to layout, you can see here we have the sample data is vertices. So basically we are copying the mesh on the vertices. Even if you switch to triangles, it will not change too much because we have less triangles there and we have more triangles in this area. So if I increase that maybe to 1000, and again this didn't fix the problem. So let's go back to vertices. So what we need to do is to remesh the text. You can do that in other 3D applications. For example, in Blender or Maya, you can export the text to the 3D software and remesh that and bring it back. But in Unreal Engine, we have new modeling tools. We can do that inside Unreal Engine. So let me show you how to do that. First of all, I'm gonna change that to grid. I don't want to get any crash, that's why I'm gonna change it to grid to disconnect the cloner from the mesh. And now I can go to modeling, and under the mesh you can see we have remesh. Just click on that and you can see we have a nice mesh and it works really very fast. So now I can click OK, and now you can see we have dense and uniform number of vertices on the text, and now it should work fine. So let's go to cloner, and now we can go to mesh and we can click and pick it. It's already there, no need to click there. So now let's go to lit and you can see we have even distribution on the text. And now let's go ahead and increase maybe 1200, and here we have it. Let's go ahead and change it to sphere. So before I change that, I like to lower this value. I don't want to get any crashes now, so let's go ahead to the motion design, and let's go to mesh, and let's click on sphere and place it there, and let's drag it under the clone and delete the cube. Yes. And now let's go back to cloner and decrease this number maybe to 1000 or maybe 1500, and here we have it. We can change it to triangles too, it works fine. Let's go to range and maybe increase this one to 0.3 and this one 0.4, and we can hide now the text, and here we have the letters. Let's go back to the cloner. I like to increase that maybe to 3000 to fill it more, maybe 4000, and you can see it works really fast. It's updating very fast. Let's see, 0.2 by 0.2. Nice. If you want to cover the entire mesh with the clone objects, you need to increase the resolution of the remesh, increasing the count of the vertices and the triangles. So let's go ahead and hide the clone for now, and let's show the text, and let's go to modeling, and let's go to mesh and click on remesh again, and here you can increase the triangle count. So if I increase that, you can see I get more triangles on the mesh, and this will help the clone to cover the entire mesh. Let's go back there, and now I need to go to the layouts and increase that number. Maybe let's set it to 6000. You can see because we have more triangles or vertices, we can cover the entire text, so keep that in mind. So see you in the next lesson. Now we're gonna start creating this logo animation using Cloner Actor. It has just two objects, sphere and cube, and it has two simple colors on it without any textures. We're gonna create the Unreal Engine logo cloner using a texture, and we're gonna create the animated circle using the cloner 2. Then we're gonna animate the offset location to add random animation for each clone. And in the last part, we're gonna create the background and animate the camera. So let's get started. First, we're gonna start creating the Unreal Engine logo. So as usual, we're gonna create the lights. So let's go ahead and click on create defaults and click on spawn. And now I'm gonna go to actors and then click on clone actor and place it somewhere here. And then let's go ahead and reset the position and stop the piloting. I'm gonna go to layouts. I wanna make the count on X to maybe 30 and Y on 30, and I can set the count Z to 1 or 2, doesn't matter. So now let's go ahead to the constraint and texture. We're gonna load the Unreal Engine texture. So let's go to content browser and I'm gonna open that. Let's select it and assign it to the texture, and here we have it. I like to have more resolution or more boxes, so let's go again to layouts and increase that maybe to 40 by 40, or let's set it 60 by 60, so we have more resolution. And now I'm gonna create a sphere because I want to create random sphere and cubes together. So let's go to 3D shapes and click on sphere and place it somewhere there. And this is very annoying in motion design, so you need to go to the shape and reset the size to make it a perfect sphere. And now we're gonna drag it under the cloner. And now as you see, the spheres are small. I want to increase the size. If you come to the mesh size and increase it from here, Unreal Engine may crash. So what I want to do, I want to move it outside the cloner and then scale it here maybe to 100 and then drag it back to the cloner. Because when I scale it and the sphere is still under the cloner, Unreal Engine crashes. So that's why I am unparenting the sphere outside the cloner and then scale it and then bring it back. So here we have the sphere and the cubes together. And now let's randomize them. We can randomize that by coming to rendering. Let's select the cloner first and under the render and in the mesh render mode, I'm gonna set that to random. And now we can create some animation on the text. We can go to the range and enable it from here. So I want to offset that on Z, so I need to animate the min Z or the max Z. So let's animate the min Z. So let's go ahead first and expand the offset min because I want to set a key just on Z. I don't want to set any keys on Y or X for now. So let's go to the sequencer and at frame 0, I want to increase the Z and then set a key. And then maybe at frame 100, we're gonna change it later. So let's set it to 100 for now and set this one to 0 and set a key. And here we have the animation. I think it's a little bit fast, so let's go ahead and increase the time. And I can select the key and move it, or I can select the bar here and move it maybe to 150. Let's see it. Maybe more to 180. And here we have it. We can go to the curve editor and select that, select the Z, and I want to move this tangent a little bit down so the animation will be a little bit fast and then slows down. So here we have it. It's very easy to do it. Let's increase the time more. You can see we have a lot of noise on the animation, you can see. So we can reduce this noise. So if you search here motion blur, you can see we have the option called reduce motion ghosting. So if I click on that, this will help removing the noise, as you see. So in the next lesson, we're gonna continue. Now let's go ahead and create the circle. I'm gonna start with new cloner actor and place it there. And as usual, we're gonna reset that. And in the layouts, I'm gonna turn the layout name from grid to a circle. And we're gonna increase the radius to cover the logo. And increase the count. Something like that. Let's see it from above. Okay, and I think I'm gonna increase the scale of the cube. So let's go ahead and set that maybe to 1.5. And now we're gonna go back to decrease the count a little bit. Something like that. And again, we're gonna create a sphere, or we can duplicate the sphere from here. I don't like to duplicate that from here. We may get a crash, so let's go again and create the sphere there. And we're gonna reset the mesh size. Let's see. And the position too. And I think I'm gonna increase the size before I parent that under the cloner. So let's set it to 100. and then I'm gonna parent it under the cloner tree, and here we have it. I think we need to increase it more, maybe double it, so let's go ahead and move it up, and then maybe 150, and let's check it. It's fine, but I think we should increase it a little bit more, maybe 200, and let's parent it again, and here we have it. It's looking very nice. So now we're gonna go to render and change that to random, and now let's go ahead and animate that. So let's go to layouts. You can do different animations under the range. You can increase the Z2, you can play with that too, but I'm gonna use the layouts to do that. So I'm gonna animate the angle ratio. So let's go to the first frame. I'm gonna click there to snap the timeline to the first frame, and then I'm gonna click on set a key, and then let's go to the last frame and set it to 1 and set a key, and let's see it. Let's see if we have noise on it. Let's go ahead and type motion. So the motion ghosting is already on, so anyway, let's leave it as that, and here we have it. Now let's go ahead and create the ground. So I'm gonna start with a rectangle, so let's go ahead and drag it there, and I'm gonna reset the rotation and the position too, and we're gonna scale it maybe 30,000 there, and this one 30,000, and let's see, let's rotate the camera to see where is the face. This is the face, so I'm gonna rotate it -90, and I'm gonna move it down a little bit. So here we have it. We have very annoying bug in motion design, so when I move that, you can see it snaps back when I move the time slider. So as you see, it's snapping back. When I move it and touch it, it snaps back. This is because for some reason when I created the rectangle, Unreal adds keys to the rectangle. So let's go ahead and delete that from here. So this is a bug in my opinion, I don't know. So now let's go ahead and move it down. Now it works fine. Whenever I create the rectangle, Unreal adds the rectangle to the sequencer and adds key on it. I don't know, it's really funny. So here we have it. So in the next lesson, we're gonna animate the camera and change the colors. In this lesson, we're gonna animate the camera. First of all, I need to unlock the camera so we can move it. So if you go to default scene, you can see our camera. So let's go ahead and unlock that. And then I'm gonna go inside the camera. We're gonna pilot that. So then I'm gonna move the camera somewhere there. And in the last frame, I'm gonna set a keys. And now we're gonna go to the first frame and I'm gonna move the camera somewhere there. Feel free to create your own animation and set a key here. So now we should see the animation. It's very easy to do it, as you see. I like to remove this sphere. As you see, we have this sphere in the scene. Let's hide it. And here we have the animation. Let's go ahead and change the color of the cube. So let's go ahead and scroll down and we're gonna click on create material designer. Hopefully this will update the material in the scene. Sometimes this is not going to update it. So anyway, let's try it and select that and change the color to solid color and maybe set orange color and hit OK. And check off the unlit. So let's see if it's going to update the scene. As you see, it's not updating. So anyway, we're gonna create a material with the standard way. So let's go ahead and click on material, and let's call it M cube and hit enter. Let's dive inside, and I'm gonna change the color to orange. Okay, and save it. This is a bug in Unreal Engine. When you are using the static mesh, the colors is not updating in the scene, but when you are using the 3D shapes, the color updating very fast in the scene. So let's go ahead and see that, and I'm gonna drag and drop it there, and let's see, select it and update from here. Hopefully this will update the color. As you see, it didn't update the color, so I'm gonna change the cube by creating a cube from the 3D shape. Let's go ahead and reset that, and reset the position too. So let's go ahead and drag and drop it under the cloner 2, and I'm gonna hide this one. So now we have the 3D shape under the cloner, not the static mesh. As you see, the icon is the static mesh actor, but this one is the shape. So let's go ahead and stop piloting and see that. So here we have the cubes. So I'm gonna delete the static mesh cube, hit delete, and I'm gonna scale this up. So before I scale that, I talked about the crash, so I'm gonna move it up and then scale it from the shape, maybe 100, and let's bring it back under the cloner. And here we have it. And now we can change the color by going to the material, and here we have the primary simple color. We can change it to orange. As you see, we changed just a color of one face, and this is because we need to turn on use single material, and turn it on, and now we have it. So for some reason the static mesh color is not updating in the viewport. I don't know, maybe it's a bug. So let's go to the camera and hit play, and here we have it. You can go ahead and increase the rows for the cloner one. Let's set that maybe to 3 to increase the height. If you want to increase the height of the circle, you need to change it to a cylinder from here, so you can increase the rows for the circle too. So if you have any questions, ask me in the discussions. See you in the next lesson. So before we render the scene, Unreal Engine will not render the scene from this camera. So there is another step we need to do. So you need to go to Add, and then click on Camera Cut Track. This is important, guys, because if you hit the render without creating the camera cut track, Unreal Engine will not render the scene from this angle or from the camera angle. So this is important. Click on Camera Track, and then click on the plus, and add the camera there to the camera cut. So now we have this cut, so you need to extend it to the last frame, so the render will be finished at this frame. So after creating the camera cuts, click on this icon, and you can come over here and click on unsaved configuration. Here you can specify the name of your sequence, and here you have the output directory, and you have the resolution. If you want to render that in the path tracing, you need to come to the setting and click on the path tracer to add it there. I'm gonna delete that. We're gonna use the standard rendering. And if you want to change the format, as you see, I have the JPEG format. You need to come to the setting again and change it to EXR or any format you like. So after that's done, so click accept, and here you can click on render. This will render the sequence. So after the render is finished, we're gonna import the sequence into After Effects and we're gonna output that as MP4. So the render is finished. Let's jump into After Effects. So here I am inside After Effects. Let's go ahead, right click and choose Import File. And here is our render, import. And I'm gonna drag it to the new composition to create the composition and hit space to play the animation. And here we have the render. You will notice the animation is very slow because this is working on 30 frames per second. So we need to increase that. We can come over here and right click and go to Interpret Footage and Main. And here you need to change it to 60 because we worked on that scene as 60 frames per second. So here we have the animation. And now in order to output that, you need to go to Composition and click on Add to Render Queue. And here you can specify the settings like the format. I'm gonna choose H.264. This will output it as MP4. And if you have an audio, leave that on. If you don't have, you can turn it off. Okay. And here you can specify the path. Let's call it 3, number 3. And hit render to render it as MP4. So see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, we're gonna take a look at the effector actor and how it works. First of all, we're gonna create the lights, create defaults, and click on Spawn. I'm gonna click on the cloner actor and place it there. And let's go to the details, general. Let's reset everything and let's stop the piloting. Let's make some room here. I'm gonna go to layouts and I'm gonna increase the count on X maybe to 100 and on Y 100. There are two ways to create effectors. First, we can go to the cloner and under the general, you can click on the spawn linked effector. This will create the effector and link it to the cloner. The other way, let's go ahead and delete that. The other way is to click on the effector actor here and place it in the viewport. And you need to do another step. You need to go to the cloner tool. And if you scroll down, you can see we have the effectors. You need to click on the plus and link it manually. Let's make some room here. So you can link it from here and click on effector. So when you click on the spawn linked effector, this will create the effector and link it automatically for you instead of doing it manually from there. So let's go ahead and move the effector on the grid. Let's go ahead and reset the position and let's scale it a little bit more. So if I go to the effector and in the mode, you can see we have the mode is default, we have the target, and we have the noise field. So the target, we rotate the objects toward a target in the scene. We're gonna take a look at that later. Let's take a look first at the default. We have the offset, so if I set this one to 200, you can see everything inside the sphere is moved up on Z, and everything outside the sphere didn't affected by the effector. So now if I move the effector, you can see we have this nice effect, and I can move it on Y or X too. So if I set this one maybe to 100, this will move them on X. You can set it to -100. This will move the shapes on -X, and the same is for Y. And you can control the rotation too. For example, I can set the Z to 90 degrees, so you can see the objects inside the effector rotated 90 degrees on Z, and I can do the same for Y and for the X2. And you have the scale too. You can increase the scale or decrease it. For example, I can set it maybe 1.5. This will scale everything inside the effector. Let's set it to 3. And here we have the effect. The other option is the noise field. So now, as you see, nothing happens because I have zeros in all parameters. But if I increase the strength, let's say on X and on Z, you can see we get something in the viewport. It's too much. So as you see, we are applying noise on the grid. And you can scale it up or scale it down. And you can animate the position of the effector too by setting keys on the position or rotation or the scale. Let's go back to the mode, and I can increase the rotation strength. This will rotate the boxes, and I can add a scale strength too. This will add a noise on the scale, as you see. And I have the panning. This will add a little animation on it. So you can see we have some animation on the boxes inside the sphere after I stop the movement. You can see this will add nice touch to the animation. And we have the frequency. You can increase or decrease that. Let's go ahead and reset that. Let's go to the default, and I'm gonna reset the scale and maybe the rotation, and I'm gonna increase the Z maybe to 300. And in the type, you can change the shape of the effector. For example, we have the sphere. You can change it to plane. You can change it to a box. And you can change it to unbound. This will affect the entire scene. And we have the easing. Basically, this is a fall off from the center to the edge of the box. So if I set that, for example, in bounce, we have different effect. Let's go ahead and increase the scale so we can see the easing better. As you see, we have a lot of shapes there. We have out, quart, and it depends on the effect you want to create. Let's go back to linear. Let's go ahead and set that back to linear and return it to a sphere. And in the force tab, basically this will add forces on the cubes inside the effector. And I think it uses Niagara behind the scenes to create the effect. So if I click on orientation force enabled, now we have a force on the boxes inside the effector. And we can control the force rate from here. We can control the minimum and maximum from here. We can apply a vortex noise to it. And as you see, it's so strong. So let's set it maybe to 500 and maybe reset that again. And we can control the axis of the force from here too. And we have the curl noise. And we have the attraction force. This will attract the boxes to the center of the effector. And you can increase or decrease the force strength from here too. And we have the fall off too. And lastly, we have the gravity force. This will push the boxes down. Of course, you can change the direction from here. You can set it on Y or X2. And now let's go ahead and animate that. Let's go to the first frame. And let's bring back the sequencer. Let's go to general and let's set a key. I think there is a key here. So anyway, let's go ahead and set the key again. And set a key. So here we have it. I can scale it too. So let's go ahead to the last key and scale it. And set the key. So you can animate the scale too. Let's go ahead to the mode and increase that, and we can add some rotation. And here we have the animation. We can add some force. For example, we can add a Kerr noise force and play the animation. And you can add multiple effectors too. So for example, let's go back and let's disable the Kerr noise for now. I'm gonna add another effector. So let's select the second effector. As you see, nothing happens because we need to go to the cloner and we need to connect it manually. So I'm gonna click on plus and then I'm gonna connect the third effector. So let's go ahead to the mode and we're gonna move this one and let's place it somewhere here. So now you can see we have two effectors. You can add more if you wanted to. So in the next lesson we're gonna continue. Now let's go ahead and create this animation using what we have learned. So I'm gonna create a new level. So let's go ahead to file and click on new level, and I'm gonna click on empty level and click create. We're gonna save the previous one. So let's go ahead to the motion design and I'm gonna create the lights spawn, and then I'm gonna go to actor and create the clone actor. Let's go to the outliner and select that and reset the position. Let's stop piloting. I'm gonna change the box shape, so I'm gonna delete this one, delete it. We're gonna use the new one. Let's create the cube because I want to apply a bevel on the edge. So let's go ahead first and reset that, and let's go to the shape and reset it too, and I'm gonna make it 100. I'm going to operator stack, and under the modifier I like to add a bevel to smooth the edges, and this will give us nice smooth edge when the light hits the edge. That's why I am creating the bevel. So let's increase the subdivisions there maybe to 3 to make it smoother, and I think it's enough. So now let's go ahead and parent it under that, so you can see we have a nice smooth edge on it. So now let's go to the cloner, and under the layouts I want to increase it on Z, so I'm gonna set the Z count maybe to 100 and the X to 102. I'm gonna leave the Y at 3. And now we're gonna add the texture. Let's go to texture and let's go ahead and drag the texture there. And you can see we didn't get the texture because the texture is not aligned on XZ plane. So as you see here, it's aligned on XY. On XY, we want to align it on ZX. So I'm gonna change the plane to XZ. So now we have the Unreal Engine logo. And now let's go ahead and create the effector. In the general, we're gonna click on spawn linked effector, and let's select the effector. I want to go to the type and make it unbound. I want to affect the entire scene. That's why I changed that to unbound. So let's go to the mode, and I'm gonna change that to noise field, and I'm gonna animate the location strength. Let's go to sequencer and let's set a key here, and let's go to frame maybe 100. We may increase that later and increase that maybe to 1000 by 1000 by 1000 and set a key. So now we have key here from 0 to 1, you can see. But I want to reverse that. So basically I want to reverse. I want to make the first frame 1000 and the last frame to 0. So we can come over here to the first frame, make it 1000, and set a key here, and let's go to the last one and set a key here, 0 0, and set a key. So now we reversed the animation, as you see. And now we're gonna apply another effector. I wanna give it some wave animation at the end. So we can do that by creating another effector. So let's go to clone and click on spawn linked effector. This will add another one. So I'm gonna go to type and again to unbound. And let's go to mode. Let's change it first to noise field. I'm gonna set this one 10 by 10 by 10, and you can see we have some wave noise on it. But now, as you see, the issue is the waves are not moving on the text. So we can animate that by increasing the pan here. So I'm gonna set this one maybe 5 by 5 by 5. Let's see how it works. I see we have nice wave on it. Let's increase the time a little bit more. And here we have the animation. You can increase the speed more by changing the frequency, or changing this one to 8 by 8 by 8. And here we have nice animation. We can increase this one to maybe 0.8. This will add more noise on it. Let's leave it at 0.6 is fine. And now I'm gonna create another cloner. So let's go ahead and select the actors and cloner actor and place it there. Let's stop the time. Cloner 3. I'm gonna change this one to cylinder, and let's reset the position and the rotation, and let's go ahead and increase the height of the cylinder and the radius too. As you see, here is the cylinder. So if I increase this one, it will show better. As you see, I'm gonna increase the height count maybe to 10. Now I'm gonna use the same cube that we created, so let's delete this one, and I'm gonna duplicate this cube, Control D, and move it under the cloner 3. And here we have the cubes. Let's go ahead and change the height maybe a little bit more, maybe the radius. So now let's go ahead and apply an effector on the clone 3 too. So let's go to general and click on spawn linked effector. We have one effector on that now. And now we're gonna select this effector, and under the type we're gonna change it to unbound again. But this time I'm gonna apply a force on it. I can apply orientation force, and this will orient the cubes. As you see, we have nice animation on it. You can increase the animation by increasing this value. And we can go to the mode and add noise field on it too. So let's add maybe 5 by 5 by 5, or maybe more. Let's see if I set that to 20. I think we need to increase it more. Let's set it to 40 by 40. And we can go to the forces, and we can add a curl noise on it. This will add nice animation on it too. And we can go to the cloner and go to range and select that, enable it. We can go to the scale uniform and add random scale to it, maybe 2, and this one 0.5. And now we can change the color by selecting the cube. You can go to materials, and we can change the primary color. As you see, because we applied a bevel, it's changing a little bit differently than I showed you before. You can click on use single material, this will apply this color on the entire face. But we can make it more interesting.